Letters to a Young Therapist, Chapter 5, Deepening Therapy, February 7th. Dear Laura, I was stranded for the last few days at my granddaughter's home in Iowa. As we snuggled inside, watching road reports on television and the blizzard outside, I never felt happier. Kate is an 8-month-old feast for the senses. She is fun to touch, look at, and listen to as she coos her various adorable sounds. I enjoy watching my son dance with Kate, much like my father danced with me. Only Zeke and Kate dance to Van Morrison, while my father and I dance to Duke Ellington. In my granddaughter's eyes, I see the eyes of my grandmother Glessie. In some of her gestures, I envision my mother. After these visits, I think about time passing and about how, if I'm lucky, I will know 7 generations of my family, from my great-granny Lee to Kate's children. I think about the role I can play in her life. I want Kate to become all she can be so that she can use her gifts in the service of humankind. Psychologist Frank Pittman calls this lifelong process of development growing a soul. Clients usually come to us with a specific problem. They come when they've been arrested for shoplifting, can't sleep, or feel anxious about a crappy job they're afraid to quit. They suffer from an eating disorder or have a relationship derailing or child who is failing in school. Generally, they want to alleviate their crises quickly and with minimal effort. Sometimes we can help them do that. Other times, these presenting problems are connected to everything else. Specific problems turn out to be metaphors or symptoms of much larger issues. A mother showed up at my office with her son, who had been arrested for hacking into the school's computer system. This boy often stayed up at night playing computer games. He had a secret life, not only with computers but also with friends, money, and time. The mother divorced years ago, and the boy no longer knew his father. They lived far from extended family. Formulating solutions involved truly understanding this mom, her son, and the environment they functioned in. Another woman dressed in tight blue jeans, high heels, and a low-cut sweater complained that her husband no longer spent time with her. She suspected he was having an affair. She said, "I work out at the gym every day and weigh exactly what I weighed when we got married," she added. "If he is having an affair, I'm going to kill myself." I asked her, "What else do you have in your life besides your husband?" Deepening therapy involves taking surface complaints and connecting them to deeper issues. Sometimes it requires confrontive questions such as, "Do you feel you have been a good father?" Other times it involves soothing questions such as, "Isn't it time to forgive yourself for this?" More philosophical clients eventually arrive at Paul Gauguin's famous questions: where do we come from? Who are we? Where are we going? Most children receive feedback about their behavior, but generally adults are on their own. No one tells them, "You talk with your mouth full, sit up straight, you need to comb your hair and put on a different shirt, or stop sulking when you don't get your way." Clients think, feel, and behave in therapy in the same ways they do in real life. We can be of great service to them if we can figure out what they most need to hear and then tell them in a way that allows them to listen. That doesn't always happen. I worked with a CEO who considered people interesting objects designed to serve and entertain him. Donald came in because he had a hard time keeping women in his life. He had an easy time attracting them and even getting them to bed. But as he put it, the only ones who stick around have cash registers for hearts. Once after a therapy session, which at that time cost $45, Donald handed me a $100 bill and said, "Keep the change." I shoved his money back and asked, "What are you trying to do to this relationship?" I posed questions to him. Who are the people you truly love and respect? Are there any people who care about you? How will your life be remembered by others? What difference will you have made to the earth? But I bombed with Donald. He had a value system in which relationships were secondary to making money. He respected Donald Trump and Bill Gates, but regarded his parents and adult siblings as nuisances he had to see once or twice a year on holidays. There weren't many people in his world who would remember him fondly. I did feel a bit of hope when I asked him about what difference his life would make. He looked at me almost sadly and said, "None of us matters in the end. We're all worms' meat." That was an answer we could have discussed had he stayed in therapy, but I couldn't meet his needs quickly enough, and he left. In the end, I was just one more service worker who let him down. As a beginning therapist, I was trained to ask many variants of the question, how did others treat you, and how do you feel about that? Over the years, my job has evolved into helping people think about the effects of their behaviors on others. Now I am more likely to ask, how did you treat others, and how did you make them feel? Good therapy should rearrange the landscape of the mind. After therapy, people live in the world differently. Behavior may change. A client who always associated anger with violence may learn that anger can be discussed. Often people think and feel differently. The wife accepts that her husband's way of showing love is by running errands. The daughter realizes her father can never be who she wants him to be, but that she can enjoy him anyway. It's all about balance. I encourage anxious, timid people to become stronger and bolder. I try to help macho men be gentler and more expressive. I remember Ken, a man who could never outrun his appetites for alcohol, gambling, and women. I encouraged him to slow down. I asked him, what could you ask yourself before you drink or gamble or have sex with a stranger? I encouraged Ken to spend a few minutes a day sitting alone, with no distractions, breathing slowly and noticing his feelings. Ken deeply feared slowing down, and when he finally did, he was depressed by the wasteland that was his internal life. After a few weeks of experiencing sad feelings, he began to make slightly better decisions. Many rigid thinkers see only extremes as possible solutions to problems. I push them to consider other options. I ask, are there aspects of this problem you're overlooking? I wonder if others might see this differently. Once I saw an old man whose son never came to visit him. He could only imagine two choices for himself, disowning his son or giving all his money to the boy after his death. I asked him, could you bequeath him part of your estate? Could you perhaps tell your son that you are lonely? I asked busy people to slow down and people with stagnating lives to get something cooking. I try to energize slugs and calm down clients who are addicted to their own adrenaline. Sad people sometimes need help expressing anger. I say start 10 sentences in a row with the opening words, I am angry about. Conversely, I encourage angry people to experience the deep sadness that lies under anger. I ask, what feeling hurts even more than anger? I suggest impulsive people think carefully, and I encourage ruminators to take action. I try to help selfish people be more thoughtful and self-sacrificing people to take better care of themselves. Together, clients and I search for the golden mean. Years ago, I made a speech in Japan. I was impressed that in the Japanese language there are many words that describe having two or even three feelings at once. English has only a few such words, bittersweet, maybe poignant, but in fact, most of the time we are feeling more than one thing. When I leave a family reunion, I am relieved to be in my quiet car and sad to be saying goodbye. When I am angry with my husband, I am also sympathetic that he may be doing his best. Watching a sunset, my heart can break two ways at the same time, joy at its beauty and sorrow at the shortness of life. Even though English doesn't have beautiful Japanese feeling words, we can help clients describe the skeins of feelings that make up complex emotional states. We can ask, what other feelings are you having right now? When we do, we take things to another level. Elizabeth Barrett Browning wrote, the earth is crammed with heaven. The older I get, the more I value life in all its manifestations, the more precious it seems to be granted the gift of time on our great blue and green planet. The biggest tragedy for me is when something beautiful wants to grow and something else stops it. I want my granddaughter Kate to blossom into a human who loves the world and works to save it, and I want that for all my clients. It's easier to see potential in my cooing, dancing granddaughter, but it is there in the CEO who tried to leave a tip and in the entitled teenager who complained about her parents. Laura, in all of us, the potential to be good is there if only someone will take the time to help us discover it and make it bloom. Chapter 6, Connecting the Dots, February 28th. Dear Laura, I can describe my mother's hands perfectly. They were tanned with freckles, liver spots, and wormy blue veins snaking across their backs. The fingernails were clean, unpainted, and cut short. Her translucent skin, as thin as paper, slipped over the delicate bones on the backs of her hands. I can describe her hands so precisely because my mother's hands are my hands now. Time moves on. In families and professions, one generation replaces another. Many of our great therapists have retired or died. At one time, there were many therapists who flew by the seat of their own charisma. Fritz Perls, Carl Whitaker, Sal Minuchin, and Virginia Satir come to mind. Milton Erickson, the greatest of all gurus, had a way of cutting through Gordian knots by making droll observations. Once he transformed a troubled therapist who had come to him for supervision by giving him a post-hypnotic suggestion to climb a mountain. As a young therapist, I was seduced by wizardry, but I gradually realized that elaborate strategies, duplicitous techniques, and complicated paradoxes are not my strong suits. I'm not sexy or edgy. Straightforward methods are less likely to bewilder me or my clients. Plus, they feel more respectful. I try to treat clients the way I would want to be treated. Only if these methods fail do I turn to more sophisticated techniques. I do bread and butter work. I celebrate victories and record happy events as well as troubles. I almost always give homework assignments. My generic assignments are have some fun, do a good deed, and get some exercise. I save the last few minutes of each session to discuss our hour together. I ask, how do you feel about how we worked together today? Did we make a dent in your problems? I disconnect my phone during sessions and I don't allow cell phones or pagers. When clients arrive, rushed and stressed, I suggest we sit quietly and breathe deeply for a few moments before we talk. Likewise, when people are sobbing, I've learned to wait. Therapy isn't radio. We don't need to constantly fill the air with sounds. Sometimes when it's quiet, surprising things happen. A woman will sigh and admit she no longer loves her husband. A man will whisper, I never told anyone this, and begin to cry. Inspiration is very polite. She knocks softly and then goes away if we don't answer the door. Outside America is noisy. In an era of nanoseconds and sound bites, therapists work in real time. To quote my friend Vicki Robin, we slow people down to the speed of wisdom. With our tone, words, facial expressions, and body posture, we convey we're in this together. Whatever happens, we can handle it. Persistence is an underrated virtue in our profession. Some of therapy is just plain plodding. Looking at the eating journals of bulimic women, talking to a depressed college student about exercise, or checking with a mother on her use of timeouts, these things don't feel like making magic or yield impressive workshop videos. But like brushing teeth and eating fresh vegetables, they matter. Change that looks too good to be true most likely is. Just as there is no free lunch, there is no free transformation. I favor incremental change. My model for this is Dr. Suzuki, who developed a method for teaching children to play classical music. He discovered that if steps are small enough, anyone could move forward into mastery. People rarely try to take giant steps, and if they do, they often fall down. The trick is finding the step size that propels people forward but allows them to succeed with each move. A person who is always turning a corner often finds himself driving around the same block. I encourage clients don't rush and don't stop. I praise what I hope will continue. I might say to a troubled teenager, I really like it that you went to school when you felt tired. That shows real maturity. I inquire, what has worked before? One of my chronically mentally ill clients told me of going to a new psychiatrist. The doctor had a 2 feet tall pile of her treatment records on his desk, but he didn't open the charts. Instead, he asked my client, have you ever had any medications that worked? My client answered, "As a matter of fact, I have," and told him exactly the mix of drugs. The doctor wrote her a prescription for them, and she began to improve immediately. I embed positive thoughts and suggestions into questions. How can you use your strengths to solve this problem? How will you know when you have truly made some progress? And how many times a day do you laugh? How would a close friend improve your situation? What would change if you stopped letting the kids run your life? I often ask clients to bring in pictures of their families and significant others. Usually, people look different than I had pictured them or than my client had described them. The evil father looks like a sick old man. The dominating mother looks self deprecating and eager to please. The handsome boyfriend looks slovenly, homely, and totally resistible. Photos often give clients a memory jolt, and they share fresh observations and new stories. Usually, both the client and I feel more accountable to the family after we look at pictures. On the other hand, many times clients show me pictures of themselves smiling and then say, "I was actually miserable in that picture." Then they'll tell behind the scenes stories. I'm convinced that a lot of posing goes on, literally and figuratively, during picture taking. Sometimes clients must be challenged. I've had to say, "I can't allow you to drive a school bus while you're smoking pot." Or, "Your wife is doing all the work in your family. Do you think that is fair?" With challenges, tone is everything. With a gentle, caring tone, we can be confrontive and still maintain warm relationships with our clients. Reframing can inspire change. If a mother and daughter fight all the time, I might say, "It looks like you both work constantly to stay connected to each other." About a stubborn child, I can remark, "This perseverance will serve him later in life if properly applied." To a man who complains that his wife always messes up the morning paper, I can say, "Every day she gives you a lovely reminder that you are not alone." I have learned to attend my own feelings. If I noticed I was stifling yawns with a client, I would ask myself, is the client talking without thinking or repeating old statements we've both heard before? Once I stopped a session in which my client was talking fast and nonstop about superfluities. I said, "I have the feeling all this chatter is a diversion of some type. What's going on?" My client fell silent, and for a moment she looked as if I had shot her. Then she said softly, and for the first time, "I want out of my marriage." Laura, pay attention to your own feelings and use them in the session. The reactions you have to your clients are most likely the same ones that others have. If someone always irritates you with no-shows, lateness, or forgotten checks and assignments, that's information about why they have trouble in relationships. We can help clients look through the triple lens of time, the past, present, and future. The past informs every moment of our lives. As we say to young women with eating disorders, nobody eats alone. We can ask, does the way your dad handled stress remind you of yourself with your daughter? Or how is the choice you are making today going to affect your future? Humans do three things: we think, feel, and behave. Often humans are compartmentalized and don't connect the dots between these activities. This compartmentalization can be dangerous. People can feel angry and discouraged and not connect that feeling with their heavy drinking and television watching. Our best work helps clients make connections. Do you think your depression is related to your cutting benefits to the workers at your factory? Or are you aware that you think a great deal about your son, but you actually spend very little time with him? And did you notice that whenever your wife leaves town, you play poker? Or have you observed that when you talk about your daughter, you hold your arms over your heart? If the secret of successful real estate is location, 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 the secret of our work is connection, connection, connection. We need to connect affect, behavior, and thinking. We want our clients connected to us, their families, and to other people. I recall Miriam, a highly sensitive client, awash in feelings and housebound from anxiety. She loved to process her emotions, but she needed to do something different. I encouraged her to take small but courageous actions. She could walk to the grocery store a couple of blocks from her house. She could call her friends on the phone. and she needed to think, not emote her way through life. I recommended she write out her feelings and the irrational thoughts that triggered them. Then she could write out more rational thoughts that would perhaps allow her to feel better. I encouraged her to sign up for yoga. You can unstick sessions by being aware of this ABC triangle of affect, behavior, and cognition. Whenever anyone is talking too much in one dimension, ask about the other two dimensions. Another way to help is to connect clients' present with the past or future. In tragic situations, talking about good times can be therapeutic. When my mother was dying, she spent many months in a hospital, in pain, vomiting, and often unable to sleep. Toward the end, when I often stayed the night with her, we happened upon a game. We pretended she wasn't in a hospital. We were on a camping trip, like many we had taken to the Rocky Mountains. I told her to smell the pine trees and breathe the cool mountain air. The bubbling of her oxygen machine was a waterfall, the bed a sleeping bag, and the ceiling sparkled with constellations. She smiled and drifted off, counting stars. My generation's wave will be the next to break on the shore. Soon, Laura, you'll be doing the work I do now. I hope this advice helps you enrich the lives of those you see.